Hi, everybody. I'm Stacey Jackson. I'm the New York Program Director for the SAG Foundation. I am so excited for this panel tonight. Breath and voice, vocal health technique, and the creative connection. We have a super stellar panel. I want to tell you a little bit about our awesome moderator this evening, Shane Ann Yance. She has taught in the graduate acting MFA program at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts for 24 years. In addition to her graduate acting classes, yeah, I heard a woohoo, Shane Ann teaches private students in a comprehensive voice, speech, and Shakespeare program, and these private classes were filmed for the documentary television series The Dream Chasers, 90 Days to Hollywood. Shane Ann has served as voice consultant, dialect coach for many Broadway shows, including Clybourne Park, Newsies, The Lion King, Bonnie and Clyde, Mary Poppins, Warhorse, Jekyll and Hyde, Mamma Mia, Spamalot, and a bunch more that I don't have time to tell you about. But trust me, her resume is like this long. Shane Ann has also taught at the Public Theater's Summer Shakespeare Lab, the Juilliard School, the Guthrie Experience, the Sedona Shakespeare Institute, the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and NYU's undergraduate drama classical studio. She is the co-author with Louis Sheeter of All the Words on Stage, a complete pronunciation dictionary for the plays of William Shakespeare I know, published by Smith & Krause. Please welcome Shane Ann to the stage as well as our esteemed panelists.
Hello? Hello? Is it on? Yeah. Thank you for that introduction. Can I take you with me wherever I go? That was lovely. One of the things that Stacey asked us she just, as a question, she said, why are you passionate about vocal health? And I was thinking about that, and other than the obvious things, we work with actors, so of course we want them to be healthy, vocally healthy. But I remembered, I started thinking about one of the very first private students that I had many years ago. And when she came to me, she was a very young actor, and she had just finished making a movie, a horror movie. And the thing I remember about it is that she had to keep screaming at the monster for 42 takes. Okay? Those of you who have made films, 42 takes, that I remember. And completely untrained and had done damage to her vocal folds and, numerous things. So I remember thinking about that because my training was mainly for the theater, but having her so early in my career was very helpful because it made me so aware of just literally how important voice work is, not just only for the theater, but also for film work. If you have to do 42 takes and scream at the monster, you better know what you're doing. And we started working, we worked gradually and did get her past her vocal difficulties, and it was exciting and rewarding to see that happen. So that's why I'm interested in vocal health. I'm going to ask each of our panel now to tell a little bit about themselves and also why they are passionate about it. So, Dr. Dahl.
Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Dahl, and I'm an ear, nose, and throat doctor, or otolaryngologist, which is probably the worst name for any medical doctor out there. And I... Hi? Hi. It's on. Can you hear me now? Is that better? All right, good. So I became passionate about the voice really in residency when I was training. I did a lot of research on the voice and how the voice is produced and went to conferences. And so just anatomically and physiologically, it was absolutely fascinating to me because it's not just as simple as putting two pieces of muscle together and creating a voice or creating a sound. It's really the whole body as an instrument. And then when I went into practice, I think the performers and the singers are some of my favorite patients because they're the most invested patients I have. And they really, really listen to what I say. And they are very motivated, to try new things and get better. So as a patient population, it's just very rewarding. And then in addition to that, I try to go to shows and take my staff also just to really appreciate how talented everybody is.
I'm Derek Rosenblatt. I started teaching when I was in graduate school, but I've been singing since I was a little guy. And I remember I had to teach for my scholarship at Rice University, and I didn't know what I was going to do with somebody for an hour. But I realized after all of the training that I had had over the years that after the first half hour or so that I was going to be really, really good at this. And so that's kind of how I got into teaching, and I've been teaching for about 20 years now. And I have all types of students, and I like the diversity of it. I have a lot of Broadway students, and Emmy and Tony and Grammy winners, and college university students, and opera singers, and recording artists. And it's really interesting to see the similarities in the process that's necessary to teach for all the different styles of the teaching. And it's a very rewarding life, and I love it.
Oh dear, I don't like this. Some of you may know what I teach is something called freeing the natural voice. If you can't hear me at the back, I can let out a little more of my natural voice. If you want me to do this, just notice whether you get more of me now or less of me now. Do you get more of me now? Yeah. Okay, it's an argument for something. Okay. Letting that voice out, letting it out even if it's got a microphone there, it's still, the voice is a truth thermometer. It's the way that you connect with your innermost impulses and what it is that you want to express. And when I'm asked why am I passionate about it, I think I'm not passionate about the voice. Well, I guess when I'm in the classroom, I get a bit passionate every now and again. But and vocal health, see, the voice is intrinsically very strong. It's an amazingly powerful instrument if you look after it. And by that, I mean, if you have your own vocal gym, you take your bodies to the gym. You do all that stuff for your bodies. Well, even if you're not a singer, if you're just a speaker, you need to be working, exercising your voice on a daily basis in order for it to stay healthy.
Hi.
You don't have to, sometimes you don't have to compete.
Kristen, I couldn't. Hi, I'm Jane Geyer-Fujita, and I teach speech at the Yale School of Drama and voice here in the city at Primary Stages, Einhorn School of the Performing Arts. And I got into this work, I remember singing as a little girl, and what came out of me was so much smaller than what I felt like I had inside. And it was a long, long journey of physical work and breath work to finally be able to start to reveal my inner life the way Kristen talked about. And that passion of that journey is what I love sharing with people, what I love sharing with my students, helping them find their breath, helping them find their connection to other.
Jane, can you just continue and tell everyone a little bit, if they don't know, about the Fitzmaurice technique, how you got involved, what drew you to it, anything?
Absolutely. So quite simply, Fitzmaurice voice work, as developed by Catherine Fitzmaurice, is a system of destructuring and restructuring breath. And so what that means, to start with destructuring, is a series of exercises that aren't necessarily set but taught differently by different instructors, that can include stretches, drapes to allow the body to open up different space for breath in different areas, as well as tremor work, which is a fantastic way of finding physical release through bringing the body into a position where it finds just a natural little shake. And then just, the same way your body would find a little shake response in fight or flight mode. And so through releasing into that tremor, the body is able to open up space for greater breath and therefore greater vocal fuel. Restructuring is using that openness that one found in destructuring and adding a little bit of support from the lower abdominal muscles to aid the diaphragm as it's ascending, to give it just a little bit more focus, as well as helping the actor or whoever's using the technique connect to the people that they're talking to, so that you use the dynamic action of the lower abdominal muscles to send it up through the body and out to whom you're reaching.
And Kristen, could you tell us a little about your technique?
I inherited a progression of exercises from my teacher Iris Warren back I've been 50 years, this is my 50th year in the United States of America, so I've been teaching here for 50 years and a few years before that. So I inherited a progression of exercises which goes step by step from physical awareness. You need the physical awareness in order to distinguish between tension and relaxation. You can't, people say relax, relax. You can't relax until you notice the tension. So that's the first step. And then the awareness of natural breathing, then how sound connects with that natural breathing, and then how added vibrations come and expand the sound through the whole body. And then once you've got some vibrations traveling through your body, then opening up the channel, that's loosening the jaw, the tongue, and the soft palate area, which are areas that will have a tendency to push and substitute for the freedom of the breath. And then from there, we go to an exploration of the resonators, from chest resonance to mouth to teeth to sinuses to nose to upper sinuses to skull. And once you've got the whole range of the voice freed up, then you can do a little bit of articulation and you're about ready to speak. But it does go step by step by step through the whole, what we call the progression of exercises. And I'm pretty faithful to that architecture, but I've added an enormous amount of physical release work, a lot of floor work, a lot of freedom work through the body. And also, which is the big thing about voice work, is how do you link the basic voice with language? What is that connection between voice and the words that are coming out of your mouth? They come from two different parts of the brain. Actually, they come from about 4 different parts of the brain. And they do not automatically coalesce. So that's a huge exploration, which in my work, I try and tackle from the point of view of imagery and imagination, largely, and emotional release.
My technique is based on 2 major voice teachers that I had, where we spent, well, the first 2 years of my training was spent on the floor learning to breathe before we ever really phonated much. So the process is, the technical process comes from that, but I like to address my students as a complete artist. And the training from the acting work that I've studied also comes greatly into that, and the medical work as well. Linda Dahl and I, she takes voice lessons with me, and I go into the operating room with her, and we have a wonderful relationship between the medical and the artistic that has been really beneficial to lots and lots of people. But the learning of how to use your instrument so that you are allowing and not forcing sound, so that we are creating sound with a very efficient process that then allows the voice to work without controlling it, is how I like to think about that.
Sounds good.
And your question is, what are some, some of the vocal issues that you have?
I just wanted to comment on Derek's comment about me taking vocal lessons, because it helps me understand my students, but my daughter reminds me that I sound like an elephant, so so I'm sorry, go ahead.
So what are some of the vocal issues that you deal with your patients? I mean, just in general, if you can give us an idea.
Yeah, so most of the time when people come to see me, they're scared. Every once in a while, it's because they want a routine exam just so that I can see and they can see what their vocal cords look like when they're feeling healthy. But most of the time, it's fear that brings performers in. And the fear usually follows an acute illness where they get laryngitis, which is the scariest, or if they have a cold or sinus infection or something like that that's running through the whole cast. The second most common reason I see performers is because they had a problem and it never really resolved. And those types of patients tend to be more scared, and they also tend to develop techniques to compensate for whatever happened that make it a little bit harder for them to get better. But most of the time, it's somehow related to other problems like sinus infections or allergies or things like that.
Do you give them exercises to do if they have vocal difficulties or problems? You don't. You send them.
She sends them to me.
So I believe the title of this event we're at is Voice and Breath. So my next question is, why is breath, connecting the voice to the breath, so important? I leave it to my esteemed panelists. Who would like to attack that? Why is it so important? Why are we always doing breathing exercises? And why are we always saying you have to know where to breathe for this text? Why is it so important?
Okay.
Go, Christine.
Well, I want to say a couple of things about breath, and you can stop me because I could go on all evening about breathing. One thing I want to say at the beginning: there is no one correct way to breathe. Your breathing is an incredibly sophisticated and extraordinary coordination of involuntary muscles that go from the very bottom of your body to the very top of your torso. And you can't do consciously any better than your involuntary, unconscious breathing mechanism can do. So if you're going to be, I don't know, a swimmer and you have to swim underwater, you're going to have different kind of breathing necessity and demands than you are for just speaking in public, in front of people. If you're going to, now, I'd love to get into this whole thing about singing as well, but basically, the demands that you are making on your breath determine the way your breath works. It's a complex geography. The simple way of looking at it, you've got the diaphragm, which is connected very closely to your solar plexus, which is the emotional receiving and transmitting center, just underneath it. So the diaphragm is the primary breathing muscle that is picking up the impulses to speak, the desire to speak, the need to speak, the emotional expression part of it. The ribs are providing added capacity, and the inner abdominal muscles are going, the crura muscles are going from the diaphragm, sort of like this, they're knit into your lumbar spine and go all the way through into the pelvic floor, which is why people talk about, think of breathing in your pelvic floor. The interesting thing about those muscles is they also pass through the sacrum, so they're picking up nerve impulses from the sacral plexus. What does the sacral plexus contribute? Instinct and intuition. So it's the creative source. Now, you don't want, and this is where I part company in this idea of any kind of control coming from the external muscles. If you start controlling anything with the external muscles, you're doing with the conscious mind something that is very clumsy in comparison with what the involuntary, unconscious process can do. So we do an enormous amount of work with breath. I ask everybody to sigh for a long time. We sigh, 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 sigh. Why? Because it actually triggers something in the mind that says, let go. Once the mind has let go of inhibition through the release in the breathing muscles, then what's very interesting, and it actually, I think, I'd love to talk with you more about it, that what then is controlling the outgoing breath is thought. So if you have a long thought, your breath, that long thought impulse goes into you, and it's the ingoing breath that matters. So the ingoing thought and the ingoing breath that matters. It actually prepares the whole vocal tract, it prepares the whole breathing mechanism, and then your thought parcels out the breath on the way out. Your thought does. So if you're adding a control from the outer muscles, you're actually doing it at several removes from the internal movement of the breathing. I don't know if that made any sense. It's a very fast rundown on something that I think is very sophisticated and fascinating and complex to talk about. That's my input for the time being.
You want to pick up on that?
Sure. So, sorry. So, I couldn't agree more.
Oh, good.
I do think that, so there's an expansion of air. It takes very little air to sing.
Yeah.
It takes efficient use of your air to sing. And I think that's kind of where we would agree, that excess use of muscles and excess use of air blowing against your instrument is going to make you smaller. Instead of, so we work harder, and we get less and less sound and less efficient sound because we're then strangling the instrument. We are putting too much pressure on this instrument, as opposed to using the strength of our bodies in a very natural way, so that the instrument can be allowed to work, allowed to vibrate, and we are just supporting something that is much greater than ourselves.
And what I'll add about this is breath is our connection to the world around us. When we inhale, we're literally taking it in. And this impulse that Kristen talked about, where the brain sends the message to the diaphragm to descend, and we take in that breath, it's the actor's impulse. It's that spontaneity. And having free breath, as you can achieve through releasing unnecessary tension through Kristen's work, through Catherine's work, through Derek's work. This restructuring aspect of it is not something that I would ever recommend anyone think about while acting. It is a natural way of breathing. You can watch babies do it. But if you're using the pressure that Derek talked about, you might be using muscles in a higher place to press down on the voice, which we'll get into when we talk about vocal health a little bit later.
Oh, and it's interesting what everyone was saying. I had jotted this down for later, but I send out a series of voice tips from my website, and so I'm always racking my brain for a new one. There's got to be a new one. And one of someone was talking about being inspired and breath and being inspired, and I looked up inspired, so bear with me on these pronunciations, but I found that inspire is from the Old French, inspirer, which is from Latin, inspirare, which is taken from ancient Greek, neo, which means breathe. So that, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, it's right there, the connection of breath to inspiration. So as actors, as you know how to breathe and you know what Kristen was talking about, where those centers are, it's all connected. It's all one thing. It's not, now I'm going to learn how to do good breathing. It's got to be connected in terms of going forward. Did you want to say anything else?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add, just medically or anatomically, is if you breathe through your nose, the oxygen is absorbed by your lungs 4 times more easily than if you breathe through your mouth. So if you have nasal obstruction, there's actually this actor on television that has the worst nasal obstruction. I can barely watch him because he's gasping for air all the time. But if you can't breathe through your nose, then a lot of the breathing techniques that they're explaining too, and yogic breath and relaxation with breathing is extremely difficult. So it may not even make sense. So clearing up the nasal passages is really key to being able to do a lot of these breathing exercises.
I have to jump in on that because I absolutely ask all my students to breathe through their mouths the whole time, because it's a much faster way in. It doesn't have to go up there and go down. And so for practical purposes, for speaking, breathing through the nose, I find, is, you're going to go, once more onto the breach, dear friends, once more. Okay, I know I'm exaggerating, but, but it's, so the practicality of breathing through the mouth, I think, has to be considered.
And I would totally agree with that. And the other thing is that if you watch someone talking, so I'm not sure, just in everyday life, we breathe in through our mouths. Just when we're talking to each other, we don't go, hi, Kristen, won't you please come in? Hello, what a nice group. We don't do that. So what I try to, that all of my breathing exercises are connected to something, what you would do in life, and then you do have to do once more into the breach or whatever it is, but it's not going against. So what about for singing? Don't you breathe in through the mouth?
You breathe in through your mouth and your nose, depending on where you're going to be starting and what vowel you're going to start on. But there is a lot of mouth breathing, and that's one of the reasons it's so important to stay so well hydrated, because the air that goes through your mouth is very much more drying than the air that goes through your nose. So the air that goes through your nose is moistened and warmed and filtered, and the air that goes through your mouth is not. So that's why when we speak and sing, we have water with us all the time. Also, the only way to directly moisturize your vocal cords is steam, because it's moist air actually goes past the vocal cords. So the vocal cords open when we breathe, and they close when you swallow. So when you drink water, it doesn't actually touch the vocal cords, but it hydrates your system. So steam and water is very important, especially when you have to speak and sing.
Speaking of that, I have a question from the group out here. Someone said, I just thought we might go into this. I have heard that alcohol and dairy must be definitely avoided for vocal health. Anything else to absolutely avoid? So we know definitely you need to stay hydrated, but is there anything else to avoid? And is that true, alcohol and dairy, or is that a myth?
Well, I think everyone's an individual and everybody's body reacts differently to what they ingest. It's fairly common for people to have a sensitivity or an allergy to dairy. And alcohol is acidic, so if you have reflux or a tendency towards reflux, it can worsen that. So I don't think there's anything that's an absolute no-no. And also, I think realistically, depending on the person, I mean, they're going to do what they do. But on an individual basis, there's certainly things that can be more helpful or less helpful for singing and performing, and that's something that you kind of have to figure out on your own.
And I guess it goes without saying, don't smoke. Panel, right?
Anything.
Hello. Yeah.
Anything.
I don't want to go into the little cigarettes. I don't want to deal with those. I'm talking about Marlboro and stuff like that.
Well, the little cigarettes can be worse than the
there you go.
than the real cigarettes. So you want to be careful of those too.
Wow.
Especially if there's an allergy that you don't know about, or but.
Why is he looking at you? I don't know. And this along the same lines, and then we'll move on. That someone else had, are there certain foods or beverages we should refrain from? But then they have this interesting list: honey, blackstrap molasses, cayenne pepper, apple vinegar, mouthwash. So do any of those ring a bell?
Well, I think in the performing community, reflux is such a huge topic, and there's some voice doctors who are adamant that everybody has reflux and everybody must be on an anti-reflux diet. And there's certain foods, so like apple cider vinegar, for example, is the only type of vinegar that's actually alkaline. So a lot of people that have reflux will drink apple cider vinegar to help with the reflux. There's also, honey is a natural antiseptic, but it has to be unpasteurized and unfiltered. Everything else, there's other natural products like papain that's found in natural papaya that can break up mucus. So I think a lot of the natural remedies that are out there do have some effect, but I don't remember the other ones.
Cayenne pepper, blackstrap molasses.
Yeah,
mouthwash.
Cayenne would probably be bad for reflux. Mouthwash, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, but some of the mouthwash, or a lot of the older mouthwash, had alcohol in it. Oh. And there's also peppermint, and both of those tend to make reflux worse.
Does anyone else have anything else about food or
I just have come across with some people, which I think is really nice, is that, if you want to be sipping something in your dressing room before a show, put 2 or 3 Ricolas in your cup of hot water, so you make your tea out of Ricola candy. What would you think? Not a bad
Sounds
idea.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll add something about alcohol, which is not the alcohol itself, which I guess can be drying, but if you're out in an environment where it's really loud and you're drinking and you're talking over the loud music, the loud din of people talking, you can put a lot of pressure on your vocal folds and end up hoarse the next day. So it's more of the environment than the actual substance itself, but definitely something to consider, a more quiet environment before performances.
And most people do damage to their cords when they're not performing. Their everyday use of their voice. So it's not like you have 2 different instruments, the one that you perform with and the one that you live with. So you want to really have a healthy process all the time.
Great. This might be a good time for one of our people who you're
Can I just
oh yes,
throw, I think
please.
this is sort of on the same side.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated by, there are always new kind of fashions about how people speak. And one of the fashions that is in current use is vocal fry. So you have the young people. So, I'm so cool, and I just talk like this, and we want to hang out and have a coffee. That would be great, kind of thing. And you may have to play that kind of a person, of course. So you need to be able to do vocal fry if necessary. But I've just had a student who I said, look, why do you talk on that? She'd never heard of vocal fry, obviously, but then I demonstrated it back to her, and she said, what? Do I do that? I don't do that. And I said, well, look, just keep talking to me and start listening to yourself, and then I'm going to imitate you back to yourself. You're doing this, you're talking to me like this. And she said, oh, God, right. I don't like that at all. And then today, actually, she came in, she said, I've just been paying attention to that thing of it's your voice all the time, whether you're, working or not on it. I've been paying attention to that throughout my day, and I'm now changing, and my voice is coming into my mouth instead of sitting on that. And I said, well, how is that for your social existence, your actual life as a person? And she said, well, I guess I feel actually more mentally alert. Well, that could be a good thing. But But it is a fashion. It's a
Yeah.
fashion now. Yeah. Actually, not only in young people. You hear it on NPR too. I've heard a few experts saying, "I'm an expert."
That's great. So we have a few people that, is this the singer? So this is for you then. Do you, yeah. Do you have Sarah, what do you want us to do?
Let's just listen first. What will you be singing?
I remember you. Okay. Is this on? Okay. I remember you. You're the one that made my dreams come true a few kisses ago. 8 more?
Excellent. Let's do that again, please.
Okay, again?
Uh-huh.
Okay. A little nervy up here. All right. I remember you. You're the one that made my dreams come true a few kisses ago.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Can't believe they picked my name.
It's a beautiful voice.
Thank you.
Terrific. How long have you been singing?
On and off. I haven't really been singing. So I've just been singing on and off for like 20 years.
Okay.
You know, I'll take a few classes and then,
Have you studied privately?
yeah, I studied privately and then I went to Jazzmobile 3 years.
I'm sorry, you did what?
I went to Jazzmobile Education.
Excellent, excellent. So let's talk about, first of all, just what you're singing about in those few lines.
I'm singing about somebody that I remember and love.
Good. Is there someone specific?
I didn't pick anybody. I was just like too nervous. I just got up here and sang. But yeah, sure.
Fantastic. So let's pick somebody specific.
Okay.
First,
Okay.
because it will inform the way in which you present the song and the way in which you sing it.
Okay.
So you can give up your fear.
Okay.
Great. Let's go again, and without any style, particular style choices, just sing to the person that you are going to be singing to.
Okay. I remember you. You're the one that made my dreams come true a few kisses ago.
Excellent. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Good. Let's go again, and I want you to take. I want you to not be in a rush.
Okay.
I want you to take in the air as part of the phrase.
Okay.
So that the beginning and the end of singing is the breath. It really is. You can't start it without breathing, and you can't finish without releasing the sound in an efficient way. Right?
Right.
So, take your time.
Okay.
Think about the person. And when you have a breath in the middle of your phrase, really use it, because every chance you have to breathe is a chance to release all of your tension and to begin again, instead of carrying tension from phrase to phrase,
Okay.
which exhausts us.
Okay. I think I get it.
Great. Take your time.
Okay.
Do you know who you're singing about?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
I remember you. You're the one that made my dreams come true a few kisses ago.
Excellent. Really, really good. I want to do it one more time.
Okay.
I want to take all style out of it.
Okay.
And I just want you to speak on the pitch. Speak on the pitch.
Speak on the pitch.
Also, what's the first vowel sound that you sing?
I.
So I has 2 vowel sounds. It has ah and it has e.
Okay.
So let's prepare with the ah. And we're going to sustain ah.
Okay.
So I remember you.
Okay.
Instead of I remember you.
Okay, I hope. Okay. I remember You're the one that made my dreams come true a few kisses ago. Sorry, I styled it a little bit.
So, that was absolutely beautiful. You just didn't support all the way to the end of the last phrase.
Right.
You get another shot.
Okay.
So what is releasing at the end? Releasing is just as important as the initial compression of the air. So if I'm compressing air, which there is a tension to singing, there's a tension to singing because there can't be release without tension. When I'm finished compressing the air, I have to release the muscles, which allows a new breath to start with no effort. So it's a natural process. And you don't want to end the phrase by grabbing in your throat or closing your mouth and just stopping the flow of air.
Okay.
It's all from the release of the compression of the breath from the abdominal muscles.
Okay.
Take your time.
I remember you. You're the one that made my dreams come true a few kisses ago.
So much better. Beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Stacy, you want us to continue here and then go back there? Okay. So, yeah, if you want to, does everyone have, or would you like to talk about, this was an idea from Stacy, I thought it was really interesting, that you had an experience with a student or a patient that you felt like you made a breakthrough with them in terms of their voice, or you may have many, many stories, but, does anyone want to speak to that? Jane?
Since I've been called on.
Yeah.
I have this private client right now who came to me a couple of years ago for accent reduction. And he's an investment banker. And, I just pretty much stuck to, sound shifts and exercises that wouldn't be perceived as too goofy or unusual for him. And he's been working with me off and on for the last 2 years. And finally, I felt like he was comfortable enough that we could really kind of make a breakthrough if we tapped into some resonance and voice work. And so I got him on his feet doing some arm swings, just with inhaling as he drew his arm back, exhaling as he threw an imaginary tennis ball, really getting him connected to his breath. And I wish I had done it 2 years ago because his resonance dropped in. He dropped his nasality, his vowels lowered from his habitual placement into a much more American vocal posture, and it was a 3-minute accent makeover. It was fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I think breakthroughs, it's almost too big a word. I mean, I feel everybody's, if they don't in the course of my class come to something new, then we've wasted, well, they have wasted time, because I know that as they do the exercises, it's going to bring them to a new experience. So I'm constantly getting feedback but I have a particularly extraordinary group of second-year students at the moment. I teach up at Columbia in the theatre program up there. And we've been doing Shakespeare sonnets. And I use the sonnets as personal work, really, to get them to connect to a deeper emotional place in themselves and with their voices. And with this group, and certainly 2 I can particularly think of, when we worked on the Shakespeare sonnet and finally something released inside, so that they came to a very deep emotional place. The voice changed completely, the interpretation changed completely, etc. But what I really liked was that both these young women came back to the next class and said, this has become my warm-up for the Chekhov work that I'm doing. Because what it does is reliably delivers me into the deepest part of my emotional existence and opens those doors. So I don't know if we call that a breakthrough thing, but I think that's very pleasing that the seemingly classical training is actually something that can open you to your deepest contemporary self.
Well, I'll just say ditto. I could not agree more. I use sonnets. That's where I begin before I get into the Shakespeare work. And it's always fascinating, especially with people who have done no Shakespeare of any kind at all, to see how they can connect to those, beautiful poetry. But if you really get going on the emotional quality of what's there and they're so actable. I know a lot of you have worked on them. They're so actable, and how that often is the first thing that they feel like they really connect their voice and their text work and their speech work while they're acting. Right. So, yeah, absolutely. Did you have a breakthrough you wanted to, or whatever you want to call it?
Similarly, there are certainly periods of great progression, and then times when there's plateaus. And every day I like watching how somebody will change and grow within a lesson. And but the best times are when I finally go to a performance of one of my students, and I see how the whole experience comes together as one thing, as an artist that is truly in the moment, that is using their technique that has become almost second nature, and seeing how the very difficult, very long, hard-stake process has come together as one thing, and it's the most rewarding part of the work that I do.
And I think I get to experience, I think, every time I see a singer or actor, especially if somebody comes in with something wrong and they've never been able to see their vocal cords, or they're afraid to see an ENT doctor, which I think for some reason is a stigma in the performing community. Like, if you have to see the doctor, like, oh no. But if you're a different type of athlete, like if you're a football player, of course you see your doctors and your trainers. And I think the same should go for performers as well. But I love when, well, it sounds sort of sad, but I love when people come in and they're scared, and they're like, and they're afraid it's going to hurt, they're afraid what they're going to see, and of course they've got all these images of how horrible everything's going to look. And then afterwards, no matter what it is, even if it's a polyp or anything, there's always this massive like, oh, and then crying, and oh my God, it's kind of fun to see. Because it's like, no, you're not dying of cancer, you don't have a polyp. But it's really wonderful, I think, just to connect them back to their body instead of being afraid of their vocal cords, or afraid of seeing what's happening, no matter what it is, even if it is a problem, knowing it and knowing how they sound, and being able to see what it looks like inside, and match that with how they're feeling or how the sound is being produced, I think is really powerful.
I have to add one thing to brag on Linda. I had a student, she's a dancer in lots of Broadway shows. Always had the huskiest, really rough voice, not much of a singer. But she was sent to see what we could do to make her a stronger singer. And she told me that she had been diagnosed by several doctors as having vocal nodules. And just quickly, vocal nodules are, from long-term abuse, they start out as bruises and they become harder and harder until they get solidified, and they're very problematic. Well, they're also non-surgical, so there's nothing to, once they get to a certain point, there's just nothing you can really do except vocal rest and steroids, I guess. But I was listening to her and I said, I'm not sure that these are actually nodules, so I sent her to Linda, and she said, they're not nodules. They're actually, they were bilateral vocal cysts, which are surgical. And so she had the surgery, and literally from 1 week to the next, it was a completely new voice. It was a voice that was almost untrainable to a really beautiful instrument. And it was pretty amazing.
Wow. When in my private classes, not at NYU, but in my private classes, what we do at the very first class, and I just started it 2 weeks ago, is I make a recording, a prose passage, and then a few lines of Shakespeare. And then, which is, I know it's a little frightening, but still, that's the first thing we do. Then at the very end, the very last class, it's a 13-month program, the very last class, I make a recording of exactly the same thing. Plus, they also do whatever Shakespeare monologue they've been working on. And I wish I had a picture of some of that reminded me a little bit about what you were saying, and not that there was something physically wrong, but the difference of the growth of someone over a period of time, if they're serious in working, of their voice work, speech work, text work, and then using Shakespeare to really challenge you. I mean, that was not the breakthrough story I was going to tell, but just in listening to everyone, it's amazing when you hear what's possible, when they hear what's possible, and I have what they sounded like. You know, it's not like, well, I didn't sound like that. Yeah, you did. Here's the recording of it. You know, that's exactly, you know, it's right there. And now I've taken to doing the little videos with my iPads, which is even more frightening. But it's exciting to hear that final recording and see, because the differences are extraordinary. The breakthrough story I wanted to share with you just quickly is I had someone call me a number of years ago, and I'm not exaggerating. It sounds like I am, but this is what he sounded like on the phone. I can't even do that. It was very difficult to hear him, and I was thinking, is this, you know, send it to a doctor or what? You know, I didn't know this person, and as we were trying to talk to understand him, I said, I will be glad to work with you, but I said, I'm not a speech pathologist, I'm not a speech therapist, you know, all this stuff that I wasn't. I said, you know, I work with actors. If you want to come, you know, we'll try. And he said he tried whatever. He'd been with a speech pathologist for 2 years, and anyway. So he came and we did, you know, some very basic work, and I did pretty much the same things I would do with an actor who had very, very tight vocal problems. And at the end of that, because I told him, at the end of the class, you decide whether or not you want to come back. And at the end, he said, I have more sound now than I have had in the 2 years working as a speech pathologist. And I was like, what? I mean, it really did not, I didn't quite register what he had been doing there. But I worked with this man who started, this is what he sounded like. And I had, he came very regularly, probably for 1.5 years, almost 2 years, and he now, and he ended up with a very normal sounding voice. And what that does, going back to what someone said, what that does for the human being, forget about the actor, he had been an actor, but just for him as a human being to go and just get a newspaper or order coffee or something without people he would have to write it down because people could not understand him. So that, that one is still very, very, just means the world to me. Okay. Oh, should we look at it? Would someone else like to come up and work with someone? Who wants to work with?
I don't know.
What are you going to do? Piece of tech?
And it's a minute. I can do like the first 20 seconds. It's kind of long.
Do you want to hear it first and then decide?
No.
All right, we'll dive in and then we'll. I guess, sure.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
listen to me. We need to talk about this. Well, we haven't talked about it, and I just think it's time. You kind of tiptoe around it every time I bring it up, but we have to take it out right now and just talk about it, or it's going to fester and just blow up on us. I grew up poor, Ian. I grew up hungry. Really hungry. Not like stomach growling hungry, like stomach burning, hand shaking hungry. Hungry like you thought a giant was pressing down on your forehead. Hungry like you thought your knees were going to give out on you on your walk home. There were times when we had nothing, Ian. I don't want to throw the word privilege around, but you will never understand that kind of poverty. I mean, it's not like my mom didn't try. It's not like she didn't work, but if there wasn't any money, there wasn't any food. And more times than not, there was no food. Your fiance grew up on food stamps, Ian. Food stamps! What's your mom gonna say about that? It's not something you ever shake.
Okay. All right. Do you want to have a go at that?
Sure.
Good. All right.
I'm gonna come over here with you. Right. So, do you want? No. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm taking my shoes off. So, from over there, I felt like I was hearing your voice, your breath not completely dropping into your pelvis.
Okay.
That there's just some muscles around your hips and in your lower belly that we can allow to find space, and I think it really has to start with your feet. Okay. Do you want to take your shoes off too?
I think so.
Okay, great. So, take your shoes off.
Yeah.
And you can't do this at auditions, really. But since we're working here, go for it. And what I want you to do once they're off is really just, can you walk around this floor and feel it? Okay. Little walk. Walk around the panelists. Yeah. And as you walk, just feel your heels strike the floor. Let your arms swing and connect with the earth. Plant yourself,
Okay.
right? And just give yourself a little rock back and forth. Okay. And then from there, little circle with your knees, little circle with your hips. And then hands on your chest. I want you to just feel your own vocal vibrations and feel them in your body, looking for them for pleasure. So let them feel good to you. And just place hands around your torso. Feel where you can actually feel vibrations as you hum. Yeah.
I'm feeling them so much below here, more here. Feels kind of weird down here, actually.
Scrunch your toes. Release them. Give yourself a little bounce in your knees. And add a little yeah. And then imagine that you could just jump into your voice on There we go. Yeah, let that ground you. Okay, what have you come here to do in this monologue? What do you need to get done?
To get him to wake up to reality.
Okay, so can we find a hymn?
Yeah.
Find a hymn. There he is. Okay, great.
Hello.
So hop into your voice one more time. Get it done. Get him to tap into reality.
Listen to me. We never talked about this, but I just think it's time.
Can I put hands on you?
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to keep going.
You kind of tiptoe around it whenever I bring it up, but we need to take it out right now and talk about this, or it's going to fester and blow up on us. I grew up poor, Ian. I grew up hungry.
Yeah, I feel your I feel your breath dropping into my hand now. You feel that?
Yeah.
That your belly's releasing. You're able
Yeah.
to take in that inhale. Yeah, keep going. Get it done.
Really hungry. Not like stomach growling hungry, stomach burning, hand shaking hungry. Hungry like you thought a giant was gonna crush your forehead with his thumbs.
Okay, so right there, that impulse. Hungry like what?
Hungry like you thought a giant was gonna crush your forehead with his thumbs. Hungry like you thought your knees were gonna give out on you on your way home.
Yeah, so land that. All the way through to the end of the line. Land it on him.
Hungry like you thought your knees were gonna give out on you on your way home.
You see his face? Is it working?
No.
Yeah, get it.
Hungry like you thought your knees were gonna give out on you on your way home.
Yeah, and you use that final Good work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is for everyone or anyone who would like to jump in about this. Do you think that social conditioning, cultural conditioning, the family you grow up in, influences the way we use our voices? I'm not talking about a regional dialect, but the way we use our voices and in terms of breath and everything. Would anyone like to?
Well, of course.
Yeah. In what way?
Well, it can be in ways that make you hold your voice in, or maybe that the whole family. You know, if everybody is talking like that, then you're probably going to end up talking like that,
Yeah.
because that's what everybody does. It's all that you've ever heard, and that's speaking for you. And then you go to a training program, you want to be an actor, and they say, why are you talking like that? So, what do you mean? This is talking. This is what I do. Right? That's one thing. It can be a particular sound in the voice.
Oh, like the vocal fry you were talking
Like
about.
the vocal
yeah.
fry,
Yeah.
which could also be a family thing. You could, let's talk about psychology. So, you know, you have a father who says, no, everybody else just shut up. I'm going to tell you what you're going to think. So, and you end up talking like this because you don't want to offend your father, right? You don't want to offend your father, right? And so, yeah, so on the psychological level, it can happen. On picking it up by the ear, you're going to be affected by your surroundings. And then you have no choice in the matter. It's unconscious conditioning. So one of the things that happens when you come to training of any sort is that you begin to notice your unconscious conditioning and you come to a point of choice. And you say, do I choose to speak like that? Or would I like to open myself up to more possibilities? And then if your training is any good, it's going to say, here are some possibilities. And as far as your voice is concerned, hey, do you know that you've got 3.5 to 4 octaves of speaking notes? What's that there for? That's to express the whole of who you are. And you may find that your family upbringing has kept you diminished to a very small section of who you are. And that there is a voyage of discovery to be made in the self that ensues from working on your voice, for instance, because your voice is you. So, yes.
That was well said and made me think of something I hadn't thought about in a long time, is that, I don't even know if I can do it, but this is how I used to talk. I kind of talk like this, except I had a Texas accent. So I kind of talk like this, and it was a little more nasal than that. And I can barely do it anymore because I feel it in my throat. So, yeah, all of a sudden when Christian was talking, that's like very personal. But I don't remember specifically that my mother spoke that way, but that was a cultural thing, I would say. I think all of my girlfriends, we all spoke that way. And it's not so much about the Texas accent as it's the quality and and not being connected to the body. And this is just how we talk, not being connected at all. So that's hard to do. I don't know how I did that for 23 years, but I did. But it's really hard. I can't do it anymore. I mean, I feel it bothers me. Anybody else about the...
Well, I noticed a lot of teenagers, the men want to sound a lot manlier. And the women want to sound a little sexier, and there's a lot of breath in the sound. All of this manipulation actually just makes you much weaker. So especially the sitting down on the larynx. Generally, the best place to speak is if you say pitch-wise, if you say mm-hmm or hello, you see that's about where I speak. That's the most, the easiest production of my voice when I speak. And then a lot of people tend to not finish their phrases in a supported way, and they get up into the vocal fry area at the end of their sentences. So they start off very well, and then they just kind of trail off.
It's funny when I walk into an exam room, I can always tell if it's a performer, because when I walk in the room, they sit up and their voice goes up. Hi. It's always, and most other people, I guess every other patient starts lower. Just a couple of comments when you're talking about, just a couple of, I guess, things that I see patients for. I've noticed that I see a lot of women, not just performers, but a lot of women who complain of having something caught in their throat or feeling like there's something caught in their throat. And it's almost predominantly women, and it's almost always, I don't want to say nothing, but nothing anatomic. So that's really,
they're not breathing?
I think a lot of it has to do with expression and feeling free in expressing. And so, and if they have stress or they have anxiety, it tends to rest in their throat. And just also the predominance of tongue tie, like actual tongue tie in performers, is amazing to me. How many people who are performers actually have their tongue is attached to the floor of their mouth anatomically.
Does everybody know what that is? Is that tongue tie? Can you?
Yeah, but I mean, but it's only a problem if it's right through to the very tip of the tongue.
Right.
Yeah. Because I have a very short frenum, but I speak very freely.
Yeah. But it's amazing to me too how many performers have tethering of any kind. Yeah, it's incredible.
Oh, yeah, I had it. It was all the way to the tip.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
it's like you're.
Yeah, all the way
Yeah.
down.
See, it's like you were plants. But
What did you say?
it's like you're plants. It's like I know, yeah. But it's amazing to me because a lot of people who have that, who are born with that, tend to speak more quietly and they have a harder time articulating. But yeah, it's amazing how many performers have that. Have tongue tie.
Well, is this bit underneath of the tongue that connects the base of the tongue
To the floor of the
bottom
mouth.
of your mouth. And for some people, if you lift the tip of the tongue up, you don't see anything. But other people, if you want to come and examine that.
She's got. So everyone look in your neighbor's mouth.
Anyway, it's actually not terribly important. I don't think we should spend more time.
Some more questions from the audience. What can one do to contend with raspiness? Is that like a habitual thing? Person who put that they always sound raspy?
I wrote that, and it can materialize at any time of day or night, and not particularly related to strain. But just I can wake up and say my voice is raspy today as it feels right now.
It depends on the reason for it. So it could be a multitude of things, and you should probably see a doctor for that. But it could be a reflex issue. It could be postnasal drip, thick phlegm getting on your cords which will dry them out. It can be just general dehydration will cause that as well. You're the doctor.
You got it. Yeah, no, that's about right. I mean, if it's something that comes and goes, then it's probably more related to something like that, like postnasal drip or allergies or reflux or something like that. If it's an anatomic problem, then it would be more persistent, more consistent.
And another thing about quality of sound, this is interesting, I thought, what is a safe way to produce a more gritty rock sound? A more gritty rock sound.
More gritty rock sound.
Yeah, I think for a singer, is this a singer, right, we're talking about? And how to do it safely?
Well, there is a whole field in the singing world called functional voice, right? Where they have developed all sorts of techniques for actually tilting your larynx in this direction or the other direction, moving your larynx around in order to create some of the wide spectrum of sounds that are now current in the popular singing field, so from heavy metal to growls to what are some of the other terms. I mean, it's all been broken down in a very scientific way for how do you do the growl? Well, you tilt your larynx forward and pull your hyoid bone back or something. And it's astonishing, and it actually works. The only thing is that I think that those sounds originally came from people actually feeling something and expressing them in that way, and their larynxes knew what to do. So the trouble with taking a technique that is a manipulation of the larynx is that it may produce the sound, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to say. So those are two sides of the sound thing that you want to take a look at. Techniques.
Some sounds that you make are not going to be healthy. If you are a gymnast and you train your body to be as efficient as it can be to do all of the things that you're demanding of it, you're still going to probably injure yourself at some point. You're going to have aches and pains. You're going to when you get into your late teens, the ripe old age of 19. Some things are just not healthy, but no matter what style you sing in, I think that you should learn a technique that is the most free, natural production of your sound, of your real sound, so that when you make choices, they are just that. They're real choices and not just the way you do something, because you don't know how to do it in any other way. Let's take something just really simple. The voice at its freest production has a natural vibrato, unless you're some boy sopranos and some adolescent girls, of which none of you are. But straight tone, no vibrato, is a holding. And it's not unhealthy, but it's not as healthy as singing your voice in a free way. If you sing your voice, if you produce sound in a free way, and then you learn how to use as little pressure as possible to hold the voice straight, that's better than just not knowing the difference and you just happen to have a straight tone sound because you're tight. So no matter what style you sing, it really should come from a knowledge of a very efficient process.
I'll add one quick thing. I'm personally a fan of the voice without any kind of technology on top of it, but probably a foolproof way to achieve this grit is to get a good producer and have them play with your voice and make things happen to it. And you're using healthy vocal production.
So while we're on healthy vocal production, some of these have already been answered, but for everyone, do you have some do's and don'ts for vocal health that we have not talked about? We'll start with you. I mean, are there the obvious, don't smoke. Anything else?
I think Derek had mentioned this earlier. I mean, there's obvious things like smoking and drinking screaming and that sort of a thing. But I think most performers, like Derek had mentioned before, tend to injure themselves or hurt themselves the most when they're not performing. So a lot of patients will come in and say, I broke up with my boyfriend, and that's why they're having vocal trouble. So I think it's the rest of life that can lead you to having more vocal trouble than actually performing. So it's really just how you live your life outside of your performing that really has the most impact.
And you already mentioned drinking water is didn't you mention someone did? Drinking water is very important in terms of the health. What are vocal nodes? Can you explain what that is? And what's the difference between, what did you mention, polyps? Yeah, what are the two?
Yeah, so vocal nodes are the same thing as singer's nodes and vocal nodules. And the vocal cords impact each other with the greatest force at the anterior, the front third. And when you use your voice in a harsh manner, or you bang your cords together like as any other part of your body, you'll get a bruise. And that bruise starts as swelling, and then the swelling can progress to becoming more inflamed, and over time it can be scarred if you continue pushing. And the problem with nodes or nodules is that once you have that swelling, it takes greater force and greater tension to produce a sound over the nodules. So having them makes them worse because it's harder to produce a sound once you have them. And there's no surgical treatment for them. The treatment is voice therapy and kind of relearning how to use your voice.
But what is the one? There is one that you can be operated on.
So, and then, there's vocal cord polyps or cysts, and those are usually just on one side, and they can happen, I kind of consider them freak accidents. Like, I had one patient who was a seasoned Broadway performer who choked on a carrot and developed a polyp, a hemorrhagic polyp. And he ended up needing surgery to have it removed. You can also have pseudocysts or cysts that can kind of grow and shrink and grow and shrink, and you can manage with them. And they can get worse in performances, and then you can take steroids and they can shrink. But ultimately, not all the time, but probably 90% of the time, they need to be surgically removed or they never go away completely. But the good news is that once they're surgically removed, then your voice can go back to normal.
That was your experience with your student that you're talking about.
And I'll just throw in a couple maybe of slightly controversial ones. One that nobody could disagree with, however, do get enough sleep. But the other is in terms of exercise, physical exercise. I ask my students to give up all push-ups and sit-ups for at least the first semester when we work, because it's really hard for the body to be taking in two contradictory messages. One is, tighten your abdominal wall, and the other is, from me, let your abdominal wall relax so that the diaphragm can move freely. And this is the controversial one. Pilates. Now, the trouble with Pilates, a lot of Pilates training, is that it asks you to have no stomach at all. In fact, it gets you to dislike your stomach. Buddha would have had a terrible time with Pilates. But the thing is, when your diaphragm goes down, it dislodges your inner organs, and your inner organs have to go somewhere, and they're going to come out this way. If you're going around saying, I should be sticking my navel to my spine, which is a message that goes around quite a lot, and I should be tightening my core, then the whole thing goes rigid in here. Your diaphragm cannot freely go down. Your breathing is going to be dislodged into your side ribs and possibly into your upper ribs. And in that way, you're not going to have a healthy flow of air up against the vocal folds. So there may be a choice to be made. Do you want to have your outer image with washboard abs or no stomach at all, or look like a greyhound? And everybody says how beautiful you are. And or do you want to have an inner image of yourself that is alive and sentient and creative and imaginatively engaged internally in the inner landscape of your body? So I'm throwing out there the difference between your outer image and your inner landscape. And I think that has a lot to do with your general health and your vocal health.
I have to add something here. I teach a lot of dancers, and it's the same issue. So many dancers that haven't had vocal training from a young age are so tucked in with their abdominal muscles that their breathing gets very high and shallow when they sing, so that the only way that they can compress the air that's necessary is by collapsing down, and it's a real challenge to have them actually release their muscles, their abdominal muscles, so that they can expand and then contract in the way that they need to in order to produce good sound.
I once laid my hands on Baryshnikov's abs.
Wow.
He could let them go like that.
Well, I
It's a
don't
professional
know. Well, I'm speechless. Okay. All right. Here's another question from our audience that kind of goes along with all this. Someone says, do you have any vocal rest and or maintenance advice for performers doing long runs at the top of their range as required by the composer? So that's a singer, but that could also be someone, let's say, who's doing, repertory of Shakespeare, as these companies are going to be doing now. So, but in terms of, this person's question was about vocal rest and or maintenance for a long run, if you're in a very, very demanding role.
Demanding roles, Elphaba and Wicked. The life of that performer becomes about the show. And outside of the performance, just speaking from experience, not that I've played Elphaba, but the show finishes, you go home, you rest. You really need time to recover. But more importantly is to, again, have a great process so that there is a minimal amount of fatigue during the actual performance. The voice is very, very resilient. And if you give it enough rest, if you get enough sleep, if you get enough hydration, and you have a good process, you should be able to do these things. If you avoid going out to the bar afterwards and speaking over, loud music and, staying up all night. But again, everybody's voice has different amounts of, some people's voices are more fragile than others, but generally they're very resilient as long as you take care of them.
I too have a comment with when I see performers who are in demanding roles and they start to run into trouble. Often the pressure is to keep performing and not miss any shows, and you don't want to call out for anything. And I always tell them if they can just take whatever amount of time they need with total vocal rest, they can have more improvement in that short amount of time than they will if they take steroids and medication and just kind of limp along, because it can go on and on and on. You can be battling this problem, and if you really just take the time out, it's amazing how much the vocal cords can just heal themselves if you let them rest.
And problems beget problems. If you start to have an issue, a small swelling, you compensate. And when you compensate, you get the problem gets worse and worse until you have to call out.
Is there some product that actors should avoid for postnasal drip or a sore throat or something, or is that just mythology? That I've heard that, and I would love for one of you to. Have you guys heard that? There are certain products you just should not take because they dry out your vocal folds. But I don't know which ones they are or what to tell
Yeah, the
people.
worst product for singers is Sudafed.
Okay.
Any version of Sudafed.
Good.
The worst.
So it's not mythology. That's
not
the one I had
mythology.
heard. Okay.
And they bury it in a lot of cold medicine. So I did that once. I stood in Duane Reade for I think half an hour and stared at all the cold medicines on the shelf, and it's amazing. They're labeled different things, but you really have to see what the ingredients are before. And truthfully, for singers in general, probably shouldn't take any of those products. One of my pet peeves in medications is Mucinex. I love plain Mucinex is one of the best things you can take as a singer, but they trick you by hiding Sudafed in Mucinex D. So a lot of times singers will say, oh, I'm taking Mucinex, but I'm having a hard time, I'm really dry, and that's because they can add things in with the Mucinex. It's really, really important to read all the labels. And then the second worst is any kind of antihistamine. And some people have really severe allergies, so they can get away with taking antihistamines, or they need to, but it's pretty rare. So those two things, which are pretty much every cold medicine that's easily available over the counter, is not so great.
This, we have had a question that I was going to ask everyone, but I see something similar from the audience. And this is for everybody. What are some exercises to center your voice and get you connected to your sound? Does anybody, if people have a specific exercise or something they want to share? And the question from the audience is, I'm a conservatory-trained actress and coach working with actors who are referred to me by agents to prepare their actors for important auditions. Are there no? Yeah. Sometimes with very limited time. Question, is there a basic go-to exercise, this could be for acting or singing, that you can suggest to help an actor to connect to a fuller sound in these high-stakes coaching sessions? I mean, there could be millions of exercises, but does anybody have like one or something you want to maybe share, Jane?
You know, a little bit of cardiovascular exercise goes a long way in just getting the body to breathe. So jumping jacks or having someone run up and down the stairs, their body will be breathing for them, and maybe the nerves that have built up will have a chance to dispel a little bit.
Anything else?
Well, you know, it's so hard because I react against the idea of quick fixes because it's a serious and wonderful and lengthy business to really deal with the voice. So anyone who goes in for a quick fix, it hasn't been doing their work as far as I'm concerned. So I slightly condemn the whole idea. However, you know, if you have to, you know, just do some shaking. Ha, 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 yeah, yeah, there you are. Okay. And then it's silly. There's nothing creative in it at all. But it might get some voice out there. Who knows? And then, of course, if you learn to vacuum your lungs, it's very helpful. Cardiovascular, if you're not going to run up and down the stairs, then vacuum your lungs instead. You'll find it on page something in my book.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's just I think it's really difficult to answer for a quick fix. It absolutely is. I would agree, something along those lines, something to get you physically going, something like throwing the ball 1, 2, or with a diphthong A, or something just to get the air connected to the sound for something just quickly to go. Did you have anything for
I'm not going to follow that.
Okay, no. Okay. So is there someone else that wanted to come up? One of our...
Hey, I'm Matt Gibson. How you doing? What's more useful? I have like contemporary or classical.
What do you want?
I'll do the classical since you did contemporary.
Oh, no.
Switch it up. This is from Henry V. We're glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with us. His present and your pains we thank you for. When we have matched our rackets to these balls, we will, in France, by God's grace, play a set shall strike his father's crown into the hazard.
Yeah, but you don't get to the good. You got to get to the good bit.
Okay.
This sort of mock. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It gets better and better.
Very good. Now, you know, for my taste, you're a bit chatty.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Dauphin, messenger from the Dauphin. How are you? You know, what kind of a status relationship have we got here?
Well, he's the king.
Right.
And this is a messenger.
And this is the messenger. Right. So, one way or another, I think you need to up your stakes a little bit. And is he really glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with him?
No.
No. So you might have a little bit of an edge to this of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah? I don't think he's really talking straight on. So, there's your messenger. There's your messenger up there in the middle of right over there, in the middle of, somewhere up there in the middle.
Okay.
Right. Do you mind if we just do this, right, classically?
We're glad the
No, you're not.
We are glad the Dauphin is so pleasant.
This word dolphin, he's playing with it. The English take it, they wouldn't say dauphin, right? So it's a stupid word for the English. They call him the dolphin. So don't throw it away.
Okay.
Right?
We are glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with us.
New breath, new thought, new breath.
His present and your pains we thank you for.
And new breath, new thought.
When we have matched our rackets
then you're going to talk about, so he's been given a box of tennis balls, right? Because the suggestion is all he does is play tennis, it's not a real game. Right, so you're going to say?
When we have matched our rackets.
Use the words.
When we have matched our rackets to these balls.
Yes.
We will.
Now, the words are going to do half your acting for you in Shakespeare. Right? Could you feel that a little bit? When we have, what? Say it again.
Matched our rackets.
We've done what?
Matched our rackets to these balls. We will, in France, by God's grace.
By whose grace?
In France, by God's grace.
No, God is up there. And you are a part of the divine right of kings. So don't throw away by God's grace. Because that's upping your status still more. Do you think this messenger can talk to God? No. It's a direct line. Right.
When we have matched our rackets.
Our
rackets to these balls, we will, in France, by God's grace, play a set shall strike. Play.
And you're talking about tennis, but actually you mean we're going to go onto the battlefield and we're going to slice you to bits, right? Yeah. Go. We will.
We will, in France, by God's grace.
By God's grace actually means something. It's not a throwaway.
Okay. We will, in France, by God's grace, play a set shall strike.
Play a set. You know, playing with this word.
Play a set.
Yeah.
Shall strike his father's.
Shall strike what? Now, really say these words.
Shall strike his father's crown into the hazard.
Good. Now drop down your spine. Relax, put your knees down a little bit. And sigh out. Hey. Now start your speech hanging head down. So.
We are glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with us.
Slowly coming up the spine.
His present and your pains we thank you for.
Let your breath drop down. Bring your voice down.
When we have matched our rackets to these balls, we will, in France, by God's grace, play a set shall strike his father's crown into the hazard. Tell him he has made a match.
All I was doing was taking away some muscles he didn't need, all the way around here in his throat and his head. Relaxing. That's known as relaxing, dropping down his spine. And when you relax, more stuff can come out. And you're more intelligent and more emotionally engaged.
Thanks.
I thought that was good.
I have another question about vocal health here, which a couple of people had written about also. Can we talk a little bit about laryngitis in terms of what it is? We were talking a little bit outside that there are different kinds, and one person had wanted to know, laryngitis in general, and then if you have laryngitis and you have a performance or a shoot in the next 24 hours, are there any rescue techniques? Is there anything to do? And I'm thinking, to me, laryngitis means no sound is coming out at all. All right, so
laryngitis technically or medically means that you have an infection in your larynx, so your vocal cords themselves are infected. And laryngitis in and of itself is actually extremely rare, where you have the infection in your vocal cords. Most of the time when people lose their voice, they call it laryngitis because they can't speak or because they're hoarse, but it's usually a result of having an upper respiratory infection or having a lot of phlegm or having some swelling that's a result of having an infection in another place. Also, people can hemorrhage into their vocal cords and lose their voice and call it laryngitis. So I think laryngitis is a term that's thrown around, and what people really mean is that they're hoarse. So in terms of a quick fix or a quick rescue, it really, if you're hoarse, you really have to have a look at your vocal cords to know what's going on, because it could be something big and it could be something small that's really fixable.
So how do you feel about steroids? People sometimes think that that's an answer.
Well, I think there are steroid moments. There are steroid moments. How can I put this? The most frequent users of steroids tend
What does it do also? Can you
So
explain
sure. So there's different ways to take steroids. Steroids are medication that decreases inflammation in your whole body. So it's not specific for your vocal cords or really any particular part of your body, but it in general will decrease inflammation no matter what the cause. You can take them orally with pills. You can use sprays, which are very, usually it's like a nasal spray, so it doesn't really do much for the voice quickly, or you can get an injection. Injections work, I mean, some people think they work, oral, taking the pills is just as quick as taking the injection, but I think taking the injection actually tends to work more quickly, and it can stay in your system depending on the kind of steroid that you take. The one that I use mostly is Decadron, and it can stay in your system for 54 hours. And if you take oral steroids, usually you take a high dose and then just kind of taper down.
And are you able to speak again if you've had laryngitis, if you take steroids, in some cases?
Right, it depends. If you have, so steroid moments are when you have some swelling. It's usually not when you have a total loss of voice, it's when you're missing part of your range for a day or two and you have an important performance or an audition or a recording and you really must use your voice. You have to be able to produce a sound. And I have a discussion with the patient about getting the steroid, because every time you get a steroid, it decreases inflammation, but it also weakens the blood vessels, so you always put yourself at risk of having an even worse injury, like a hemorrhage to your vocal cords. And people who excessively use steroids tend to have more of a more of a frequency of vocal cord hemorrhage. So that's the danger. And the other danger is if you're relying on steroids to feel good, you feel great when you're taking them, you can overuse your voice or use poor technique and then cause even further damage once they wear off. So that's the real danger with steroids. But I think steroids are really a fantastic tool for when you need it and when you absolutely have to use your voice. But it isn't something that you should be relying on or depending on.
Anybody else with experiences with that?
Well, one thing I'll add is I think that if we're not talking about medical laryngitis, but swollen vocal folds that are inhibiting full phonation, I think sometimes the actor's impulse is to try to use the voice to make it better, and I think that that can actually make it worse. Is that true?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's really important to just have patience and to rest and to wait for the vocal folds to heal. As you said earlier, they're resilient, they just need time to rest. So be patient.
Yeah, that's an excellent point too. So if I do give steroids, I love if the patient will have at least 24 hours of vocal rest while they take it, or at least when they take the highest dose, because the combination of voice rest and steroids goes a lot farther. And it really, because if you just take the shot and then just go sing your heart out, you're not necessarily allowing your vocal cords to heal either.
You can do damage, yeah. We have one more person.
I think you ever take a dump made you feel like you just slept for 12 hours? Or a piss? A great meal fades in reflection. Everything else gains. You know why? Because it's only food. I mean, the shit we eat, it keeps us going, but it's only food. The great fucks you might have had. What do you remember about them? I don't know. For me, I'm saying it's probably not the orgasm. Some broad, her arms around your neck, something in her eyes. There was a sound she made.
Kristen? Jane? Yeah, come on.
I don't fancy working with that material.
How about the Gettysburg Address?
No.
I can do Shakespeare.
So why are you saying this? Why is the person saying this?
Because he's trying to get a point across to his friend.
In order what? To one up his friend, or what?
Basically, yes. Yes.
Oh, okay, so there's a purpose behind it.
Oh, yes.
Which is to
one up. You're sitting.
Yeah, to be
talking,
up and put the other one down.
Exactly.
All right. Now, do you mind if I put my hand on
Not at all.
your breathing area? All right. So, would you just let your breath? Just think of somebody out there. Somebody quite not too far away. There's somebody you can talk to there. All right. Would you let your breath just go with that feeling of what it is that you want to do, right to him? Just let your breath take that feeling right to him from here. Yeah, a little bit more. You didn't quite reach him. So just a little bit more. The deeper sighing out of the breath. Now, almost as if you're spitting a little bit at him, go. Out it. Right, so your lips and tongue are picking up your intent as well. I want to put him down, yeah? Or whatever it is that you say. Your lips and your tongue and your breath. Now, whisper, just like that, with that intent, onto your whatever. Right? Let's just whisper your speech. That always happens. The brain pattern has been shifted, so you always forget your hands.
You ever
No,
take...
whisper. No voice at all.
Okay.
You ever take it down? Made you feel you just slept. Already, it's rather miraculous. So what did we do? we took his voice away and he became more interesting. Something a bit strange going on here. Huh? Right? Go on to the next one. Now keep thinking, feeling, and playing what it is you've got to play, but just whisper it. Go on from there. Go on from the dump. You don't have to lean to him. It's that breath. Just do that. Oh, a big breath. Don't let it catch in your throat, comes right into your mouth. Go on to the next thing. It's about orgasms. All right, go. Or a piss. Oh, a piss, sorry. Go on. So really your intent? Oh, let's go further. How about that? It's a new idea, new idea, new idea. Or a great meal. Good, another new idea. Let it out on your breath. Shit, let it out on your breath. Shit we eat keeps us going, but it's only food. Good, open here for a new breath. Go on to the next thing. The great fucks that you may have had. Are you getting that up at the back there? Good, good, big sigh. Out it goes, go. What do you remember about them? Right. Now just go back to the great fuck you once had and just whisper that. One more time, go. Great fuck. Now voice that, go.
What do you
No,
mean?
let your voice do the same thing. The same thing you've just whispered, you're going to voice it, go.
Great
No,
fuck.
with full voice.
A great fuck you may have had. What do you remember about it? For me,
Now, yeah,
for me, I'm saying it's probably not the orgasm. Something she said.
Good. Now whisper that.
Something she said. I mean something.
Good. Don't think how you're going to say it. Just think what you're saying.
Something she said. I mean some broad forearms on your neck.
Good. Now voice that from something she said. Go. Let your voice out very fully. Go.
Something she said. Some broad forearms on your neck. Something in her eyes.
Okay. Now, are you beginning to hear a little bit more of the content?
Yeah.
Are you feeling a little bit more of the
Yes.
content of what you're saying?
Yes.
So that's what you're going to plug into. Plug into the content, not how you're going to say it, what it is you're going to say, and your breath picks it up. And then your lips and tongue just are part of the game.
But I need to keep it down here.
Well, the impulses need to come up from down there.
Okay.
Does that give you a little something you can
No,
play
give me a
with?
lot something.
Okay.
I've come to the end of my questions and your questions. Does anyone have anything else that they'd like to say to close with?
No, I would just like to reiterate that obviously, I mean, a lot of you work for film as well as stage, that your voice, and I'm going to say it again, it's the truth thermometer. So it's not, although I talk about freeing the natural voice, not about having a big voice, but having a true voice. And that its internal connection is what will really make the difference when the camera is on you and when the microphone is picking you up in, from a much more intimate level.
I would just piggyback on that, I don't know about you, but I always find the most interesting screen actors, if you look back through their history, have started out on the stage, almost always, because their voices are the most interesting. Maybe not 100%, but a huge percentage of them, at least the people that I want to hear and that have flexible, transformative voices. You go back and you look at their history and they started in theater. So that definitely translates over, whether the microphone is here or when I was done some shows, Shakespeare in the Park, I can always, the people with the best voices are the ones that little tiny microphone transfers over. Yeah, right, absolutely.
They did it when they did Comedy of Errors, and there was a huge thunderstorm, and all the electrics went out, and about 800 people stayed with the rain pouring down, and they played through to the end of the show with no mics at all.
Oh, wow.
And the thrill was just amazing. They all had their own electrical charge from it, and they played it out there. So
That's exciting, yeah.
It's so interesting that yeah, it's a different energy there.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you all.